Formula One on 5 Live.
Welcome back to Miami. We're in the Miami Gardens region, racing around the grounds of the Hard Rock Stadium, home to the Miami Dolphins NFL team. And after the rain-affected sprint race a couple of hours ago caused carnage, well, the grey clouds have turned to a puffy white, separated by patches of blue, and the temperatures, well, they never really went down on us. The heat in Miami keeping true to its name. We're about 10 or so minutes away now from qualifying for the Grand Prix. Up in the commentary box is myself, Harry Benjamin, but with a better view of what the clouds are doing, along with the action in the pit lane, is Jenny Gow. Afternoon, Jen.
Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us and welcome to Miami. I have the best view I've had all weekend. I'm looking down on the last and final corner of this wonderful, awe-inspiring track and the bridge over turn 19. As what is normally a multi-storey car park on and off bridge and ramp is turned, for this weekend only, into the media access. So I thought I'd come up here. Grandstand 18 is just in front of me. The sun is shining. We've had rain earlier on. It led to a very chaotic sprint race, but now it's time for qualifying, and it looks to be dry, sunny and very hot. When they say Miami heat, now I know what they're talking about. The backs of my calves are burning. Weird.
I'll get the sun cream out of the rucksack, Jen, don't you worry.
Amazing, although it's quite far away from you, so I'm not sure. Are you offering to put suntan cream on my legs as well?
It's all part of the job, Jen. It's all part of the service.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. We'll check in with you in a little later during qualifying. And our commentary box, well, we're positioned just on the inside of the final corner, right by the pit lane entry. So we are in a good spot here to see all of the 20 cars streaming around and into the pit lane. We've had better views before. I'm getting odd looks from my co-commentator, who I'm pleased to say he's come back after his first jaunt with us in the sprint race. We haven't scared you off. 1996 Formula One world champion Damon Hill.
Yes, I'm back. I have to say, it doesn't look a bit like it did do this morning. It's raging hot out there in the sunshine, and we've got a dry track and a hot track as well. And this, of course, is qualifying, which is normally like the peak of the action on a Saturday. But I think we had a very exciting sprint race, so we've had quite a double dose of action. But I mean, this is it now. This is the one that really matters. What was it that Toto called the sprint? It was to Kimi Antonelli,
like a mini race, or a pre-race.
Yeah, it was just don't worry about it. It's not much. It's not worth anything.
I suppose it's not worth anything when you're not scoring points.
Yeah, we're trying to make him feel better, obviously, because Kimi Antonelli was on pole position, and unfortunately it didn't go very well, and then he got involved with that pit lane crash.
Well, hard to blame.
It wasn't his fault, that one. So he had a bit of a duff sprint race, but this is it again. Can he do it again in the big fight, if you like, for pole position for the Grand Prix?
Well, I'll tell you what, when we looked at the data after sprint qualifying yesterday, Mercedes' advantage seemed to be on the straights. Antonelli was actually quicker than his teammate George Russell, which suggested maybe there were some different downforce setups going on there. Of course, Parc Fermé reopens after the sprint race, so cars and drivers are allowed to make some tweaks ahead of this qualifying session to try and fine-tune their cars. Not expecting any more rain for this session, although there is still a little bit lingering for Sunday's Grand Prix. But right now, it is full focus on the battle for pole position around the circuit here, which is just over 5.4 kilometres, 19 turns, 12 to the left and 7 to the right, as Lewis Hamilton climbs into his car, in his Ferrari car, having finished third earlier on today in the sprint race. But it really is beautiful conditions now to go qualifying in. And, well, Lando Norris took the win, Damon, in the sprint, but he's got to do it again and try and deliver. He didn't look as quick as teammate Piastri in the sprint qualifying yesterday. So has he got a little bit more to find over one lap?
Well, let's see if something like the sprint result has put a little bit of a spring in his step. He might be the confidence is back a bit more. It's we saw a bit of a tide turn, although a very small one, back towards Lando in the championship. But these guys are certainly the favourites, I think. But I'm always nervous about saying that, because Max Verstappen is the master at the one lap qualifying, and I think it could again be something that he could surprise everyone, and he's certainly a threat. I'm not counting Kimi Antonelli, of course, which we have to factor that in now.
Well, and if he was fast, I'm sure George Russell will be hoping to try and put his hat into the ring as well. We're just a few moments away then from getting the green light going. Red Bull seemed, again, looking after the sprint qualifying session yesterday, they seemed strong in those medium speed corners, but not as good on the straights. And David, what do you think about this track? Because it gets mixed reviews from the drivers. Everyone loves Miami, but the actual circuit, where do you stand on it?
Well, it's what they would call it's a compromise circuit a little bit in that it has to wind its way through some very tricky bits, and there's a particularly slow section where the cars are 14, 15, where the cars are kind of struggling to get through. They're not built for that kind of tight, twisty part of the circuit, but nevertheless it's provided drama, and it provides a challenge for drivers and teams to get a car that is nimble enough to go through those bits and also strong enough to go for the faster corners around the circuit. There aren't a lot of fast corners, there's fast curves, but it is what it is, and I wouldn't say that it's the greatest racing track in the world, but that said, you only need a racetrack to go racing on. You need 20 cars and some racing drivers, and then you've got yourself a Grand Prix.
You absolutely do, and we can reach speeds around here of over 330 kilometres an hour. It's got a range of low, medium and high speed corners, anti-clockwise as well. From the pole position mark, it's about 176 metres down towards that right-hander of turn 1, which takes you through a series of left-right sweepers that make up sector 1 before you're full throttle onto the first straight, the first available opportunity for a DRS zone. It is a slight corner coming through turn 9 into 10. That is your first dose of DRS after the start-finish straight. That leads you into a heavy braking zone of turn 11, where you then concertina up to the left, it U-bends to the right before you then tighten up even more over that tricky chicane through turn 14 and 15 that sees you up and over the crest. Almost a 90-degree left-hander leads you back onto that long back straight, just over 1.2 kilometres in length. Heavy braking into turn 17, and then you sweep your way left and right, and that finishes off a lap around this 5.4 kilometre track, which Jenny Gow, I think our 20 drivers are almost ready to head out on.
They are chomping at the bit to get out there for qualifying. Just an update for you, Fernando Alonso's car was damaged during the sprint race. The team are just updating us saying it will be ready for qualifying after that damage. Amongst things that has been changed or replaced, the gearbox, right front corner, rear wing and front wing. So that's a lot of work to go on after that collision with Liam Lawson. And they've done such a good job of getting him ready for qualifying. Well done to them.
Yeah, well done. I'll tell you who has been busy. The stewards have been handing out the penalties since we were last with you for the sprint. Ollie Behrman was handed a 5-second time penalty for an unsafe release in the pit lane. That dropped him out of the points in the sprint. Alex Albon was also given 5-second time penalty for a safety car infringement. That dropped him out of the points. Charles Leclerc got away with a reprimand after trying to drive his broken Ferrari back to the pits and shedding debris onto the track. That was on his way to the grid. And then Liam Lawson was also handed a 5-second time penalty. That was for his incident with Fernando Alonso. So Lawson then deemed of causing that collision with Alonso. And as we heard from Jen there, the team doing their best to try and get him back out onto the circuit. Just in terms of how that leads the drivers and the constructors championship, well, Piastri still leads the way on 106 points. Lando Norris with 97 in second, 10 points clear of Max Verstappen. Then it's George Russell and Charles Leclerc, the top 5, and then over in the Constructors' Championship, McLaren extend their lead. 203 points they have over Mercedes with 118. Red Bull sit third ahead of Ferrari. Then Williams still best of the rest. Shame they won't get Alex Albon's good points, but they still hold on to that 5th place ahead of Haas. Aston Martin picking up some more points, courtesy of Lance Stroll in 7th. Racing Bulls in 8th, and then Alpine 9th with Sauber. All teams getting off the mark, but Sauber down in 10th and last as we get ready then for this qualifying session. Damon, predictions? Who's your pole prediction?
Oh, well, I mean, I think it's going to be so tight. I mean, the gaps between the drivers in qualifying at the sharp end have been thousandths of a second. I think it's down to who can get that clean lap, no mistakes, no interruptions with traffic and so forth, getting put out on the circuit at the right time, and having the tyres prepped now because they have got a hot track, and they are going to have to get their tyres. We think we saw some blistering on Friday of some of the soft tyres around here when the track was hot. So, they've got a little bit to learn about what's going to happen. And as you've noted, because I'm waffling on and on, I've avoided giving you a prediction.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it'll be one of the... I'm throwing Kimi Antonelli now into the pot, but I think that I still see this as a championship battle between Lando and Oscar Piastri.
Well,
I don't think you can get away from actually giving us a prediction, though. I mean,
right.
I know that you've tried.
Okay,
but
Kimi
no.
Antonelli is going to be on pole position.
Okay, we got there in the end.
No.
I was just going to say, are you joking?
No, I'm saying it's a possibility. All right then, it'll be Lando on pole, and then Oscar, and then Max.
No, I want the whole grid. No, I'm just joking. That is just a joke.
Me.
Sorry, Damon. I just wanted to ask you a question, basically. The drivers went through a really arduous, grueling, brain requiring, look at me not being able to require my brain, sprint race earlier on today. It wasn't the usual sprint race. I just wonder if that will have an effect on them mentally and how quickly they'll be able to react to things in qualifying.
Are you asking that as a driver?
Yes.
Yes. Well, it is an extra load on stress, if you like, on these drivers. You need to have another competition or two intense competitions in one day. But then I used to think that you could be, if you're not. It actually sharpens the mind a little bit as well. So I think they've got the stamina. I think they've got the attention. I think they're quite capable of delivering incredible performances throughout the day. There will come a point where they get tired and need a lie down. But at the moment, I think they're probably in a better position now, having had the warm-up of the race this morning, where they've had time to think about things, settle in. We used to have a race warm-up when I was racing, and that was always good to settle the nerves before the race itself. So in some ways, they've kind of already had that warm-up before qualifying, because otherwise they'd go into qualifying almost cold. Well, they'd have the FP3 session, I suppose. But so they, I think it's situation normal for them. They can keep up these intense performances all day long.
What's interesting, though, is none of these drivers can take any learnings from the sprint race into this session, really, because we've got totally different conditions, totally different track almost. Teetering around, not so much the case.
Not just that, Harry, but totally different setups in a lot of cases, because of course you can change the car between the sprint and Grand Prix qualifying, and there were some dry laps at the end, so I'm sure that there'll have been lots of tinkering up and down the pit lane, especially from the people who weren't happy with their cars, like for example Lewis Hamilton, although he finished third in the sprint, but another great result in the sprint, like in China, not quite as good as China, but still pretty good compared to his general competitive performance. They will still be looking for performance at Ferrari, because he wasn't trying to say that it was any kind of suggestion that he was back on the pace.
That's the voice of the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson, who joins myself, Harry Benjamin and Damon Hill in the commentary box for this one. Qualifying underway then for Sunday's Grand Prix. 14 minutes and 34 seconds remaining. The sun is shining over this Miami International Autodrome circuit as every car heading out onto the circuit on that soft Red Bull tyre. Pierre Gasly coming across the line now to complete his first lap in the Alpine, and slots behind the two Saubers actually in third. It's Nico Hülkenberg fastest at 1:28.3, followed by teammate Gabriel Bortoleto in these early stages. Good to see Fernando Alonso out on the circuit. This is the sound of the Spaniard in his Aston Martin, hitting the brakes going down into the left-hander of turn 17. Big crash for him involving Liam Lawson in the sprint. Aston Martin doing a great job to get that car repaired and back out. He was fastest in the first sector. That's just been taken away by Max Verstappen, but Alonso does go top with a 1:28.058. Sainz across the line next to put himself up into second, and straight away, Damon, those small margins already there to be seen. Mere thousandths of a second, separating Alonso and Sainz, and Albon's just gone to the top as well by a couple of tenths.
Yeah, let's see though. Max is on the track, so one of the front-running contenders, you'd have to say, is going to set a bit more of a representative benchmark when he finishes his lap. If he doesn't hit the wall, which he came very close to doing there on turn 15, except turn 14.
Also worth noting, I think Doohan, Bortoleto, Hülkenberg and Behrman are all on fresh, soft tyres. Everyone else on a used set so far. So that's the tyre update with what's going on out on track with just over 30 minutes to go. But Max Verstappen now was fastest in the first sector. Piastri is fastest in the middle sector. Let's see what Verstappen has got across the line for his opening gambit. Goes over 2.5 tenths clear at the top. P1. A reminder, of course, we're looking to eliminate the slowest 5 drivers come the end of these next 12.5 minutes or so as Lewis Hamilton pops up into 4th, fastest of anybody in that final sector.
Of course, the other thing to mention, Harry, is the track will evolve. This track will have got quite a bit of grub on it from the weather that we had. So it won't be right back to square one, but it certainly will be not as clean and as grippy as it was if there hadn't rained this morning.
Yeah, just on Hamilton, by the way, yes, he was fastest in the final sector, which causes basically a straight and a slow corner, but he's slower than Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin, and even allowing for a stronger performance this weekend from Alonso in that car. That's not a good lap from Hamilton in the Ferrari. I don't know whether something went wrong for him, but he'll need to do better than that to stop it being shaky to get into the top 10.
Still waiting lap times from Hadjar, Russell, Antonelli and Lawson. Indeed, Antonelli was out there but then fed straight back into the pits. So too for George Russell. Just perhaps scrubbing a set of tyres before coming into the pits. So still nothing from Hadjar, Russell, Antonelli and Lawson. What will be really interesting actually to see what teams have learned from yesterday, because in the sprint qualifying yesterday we had a whole load of drivers through communication issues out on track, at the very least, didn't manage to set their final flying lap time. I'm thinking Jack Doohan, Yuki Tsunoda, Oliver Behrman all saw themselves lose out on a final chance to set their final quick laps. And I think Jack Doohan was irate after sprint qualifying yesterday.
Yeah, there was a lot of backing up and people going out of the pit lane. And if you were at the back of the queue, then of course you were put way to the back of the lap. So it all depended on people in front of you getting out early enough so that you could complete your lap. So even if you were sent out, let's say, at the right time, it all depended on whether or not the people in front of you chose to use up some of that time. So it was possible for the drivers not to get their final lap in, and that's a bit of a loss. We saw drivers like Max and also George Russell go out in the final run to go early, but of course it's slightly different in this format than it is in the sprint format.
And on that topic, actually, it's worth bearing in mind that because the sprint race was wet, the track will have been washed clean, so it'll be ramping up quite rapidly during this session probably. So going out late is going to be probably more important even than usual. So that's just going to increase the likelihood of traffic jams at the exit of the pit lane and on those out laps.
Yeah, we've had a couple of support categories run in between. I think we had some Porsches out on track, along with F1 Academy as well. So that will help a little bit when it comes to the grip. But you're right, with 10 minutes and 9, 8, 7 seconds remaining of this first part of qualifying, we're really waiting for the crunch zone.
Sainz or Albon is not allowed to go in front of me, right?
You have priority. He will have to let you by. You have priority. He doesn't have a wheel in the fast lane. That's confirmed.
So that was Isaac Hadjar in the Racing Bulls referring to Carlos Sainz's Williams as they were waiting to go out into the pit lane. An absolute traffic jam. Now, it was Sainz who was trying to get a wheel crucially over that white line in the fast lane. If you get the wheel out there first before the car arrives, that does give you priority. But it looked a bit tight there for Hadjar, and Racing Bulls well convinced that they had the priority there. So we'll see if that one gets noted by race control. Indeed, it actually has. Incident involving Albon, I should say, not Sainz, will be investigated after the session for that pit lane infringement there.
I had some similar issues trying to get off the freeway on the way into the circuit today, where you have to get one wheel ahead.
You've got to get your elbows
otherwise
out.
Yeah.
They don't like letting you in here, do they? No, they're really not.
You have to indicate early.
8 minutes, 52 seconds on the clock. Hadjar, talk of the devil, he is out on track. Hadjar, who has really been showing well, actually. Well, if we forget that Australian formation lap faux pas, has been looking strong. And actually the rookie that I think has lit up a lot of eyes up and down the paddock. Some good qualifying results from him in the last couple of rounds as well for Isaac Hadjar. 2 7th place finishes back in qualifyings, I should say, in China and Japan, following up with a couple of points finishes as well. Last time out in Saudi, managed to nick the final point He's on a quick lap at the moment, coming through the final sector now. One final corner which sweeps to the right for Hadjar, and across the line for the Racing Bulls, puts himself up into second. But we're expecting the track to keep getting quicker, to keep ramping up, and with over 8 minutes left on the clock, it's going to be those final few minutes that really count, especially for those bottom 5 that want to get out of that elimination zone. Only the top 15 go through.
I'm going to be interested to see whether Isaac Hadjar's lap is enough to keep him out of the in the top 15, actually, whether that will stand or whether it's going to slip back. How much track improvement, how much evolution are we going to get? Is it going to be half a second? I mean, he's already sliding down the order.
Yeah, Sainz just gone top 127.0, so that's about almost 4/10 clear of Hadjar. Kimi Antonelli is about to cross the line and goes to the top. The man who put it on pole for the sprint race, trying to follow it up with Grand Prix pole, would be his first ever Grand Prix pole position if he can hold on to it come the end of Q3. Right now it's just fine to get through into the top 15. 7 minutes, 12, 11, 10 seconds remaining. Fast laps coming in now in these closing stages. 7 of it remain. Antonelli currently top. What's his teammate doing? George Russell not as quick on that run. Over 3/10 adrift. Russell puts it up into 7th. Tsunoda's on a quicker lap with it absolutely is. Welcome along, everybody, to Miami. We are qualifying around the grounds of the Hard Rock Stadium, home to the Miami Dolphins NFL team. We're at the Miami International Autodrome for round 6 of the Formula One World Championship. It's been a busy Saturday so far. It's a sprint weekend, which means we've had our sprint race already, and it was absolute chaos with the rain pouring down. In the end, it dried up. Lando Norris took the win with the help of a safety car ahead of Oscar Piastri, and right now, though, we find ourselves, after a little break, back out on track. We're qualifying for the main Grand Prix on Sunday. We've just got 6 minutes remaining of this first part of qualifying, where the top 15 go through to the second part. My name's Harry Benjamin, up in the commentary box. Delighted to be joined alongside the 1996 Formula One World Champion, Damon Hill. And Damon, we're really getting into the closing stages now. The track ramping up quickly. Why does that happen? Why do we wait for those final laps?
Yeah, well, it is getting more and more intense, of course. We've got 5 minutes left of this part of qualifying, which is only Q1, so we've got 2 more sessions after this. And, of course, it's the final one, Q3, where the drivers will be going for pole position. And at the moment, as we speak, we've got Kimi Antonelli quickest. And I'm wondering if this is... and just as I speak, of course, he's been pipped by Max Verstappen, but only by 2/10. And I have to say, you're talking about track evolution. Even the time that elapsed between Kimi Antonelli's lap and Verstappen going quickest, the track would have got quicker because cars go around the circuit and leave hot rubber. And every time they spin the wheel slightly, that rubber is stuck to the track, and that track then becomes stickier and stickier. And so their advantage is towards the drivers who go later and later into the session. Of course, that becomes a problem because of traffic. Everyone wants to go at the end. And then you get into problems with cars being held up on their quick laps.
Interesting, though, last couple of laps around after Max Verstappen, Piastri crossed the line. Over 1/10 adrift of Verstappen. Norris only 5th at the end of that. He was actually down on time in the middle sector. Traffic management can be a slight issue around here, particularly when concertina is up in the middle sector and when you're trying to find that space coming into the final corner, or if you simply make a mistake like Lewis Hamilton has just done, locking up into that heavy braking zone, the front left tyre smoking. It's not going to feel pretty on that front left.
And this is one of the issues he's had problems with Ferrari moving from Mercedes, as they use a different braking manufacturer, and so his feel through the brakes, he's had trouble getting on top of and getting out of the habit of braking in the way that he's always been used to at Mercedes, who use a different company. So we just saw him locking up, and I wonder if he was going to comment on that.
Well, with 3 minutes and 52 seconds left, it's Verstappen who is currently fastest ahead of Piastri. Antonelli out there on track at the moment, about to do another lap, we think. He's on an out lap. Sainz 4th ahead of Norris. Then it's Albon, Bortoletto, Lawson, Russell and Hülkenberg the top 10. Leclerc is 11th ahead of Tsunoda. Hadjar is 13th. Doohan and Hamilton currently right on the fringes in 15th place. And at the moment, if it ended like this, Esteban Ocon is 16th ahead of Fernando Alonso. Pierre 18th, Stroll 19th. 19th and Ollie Bearman 20th.
And do you remember, Harry, I mentioned Isaac Hadjar's lap early on where he was second quickest. He's now 13th. That's track evolution as well. So he's now on the bubble a little bit. He's going out of the pits right now, so he's going to do one more run. He's got 3 minutes left. But he has been impressive. You're absolutely right. Do you remember when he was crying in Australia after what happened? In the race, he was so crestfallen, and yet he's recovered from that, and he's really impressed everyone with his performances, not only in qualifying but also in the races.
Yeah, he really has come into his own, hasn't he, Isaac Hadjar, the French rookie who finished second in Formula 2 last year. Right, final run's being done then as George Russell heads down to turn 1. Let's check in with Jenny Gow.
Grandstands down here opposite me in the pit lane are absolutely full and heaving, flying loads of different flags, representing all sorts of nations here. One for India just in front of me. There's another one for Scotland and one for England as well. Good representation. Loads of people have come here. As you came into the track, it was absolutely packed full of fans, just waiting to get a glimpse of these cars. And a glimpse is exactly what they're getting. A good day, actually, isn't it, to come to the races, sprint race and qualifying. Saturday's good now. Just a quick question. Looking at poor old Kimi Antonelli earlier on, I just wonder, he's still young, he's still learning a lot about F1. This is only round 6. How much do you think he would have learned from that experience of being on the front row, but also what happened in that race?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? It was a tough race, wasn't it, for Kimi, Damon? But again, a lot of learnings. He had to get his elbows out, fighting up at the front. He would have taken a lot from that.
Yeah, and he said quite interestingly, after what had happened, he got biffed. Well, he claims he got biffed, or he got squeezed out, really. They both went into turn 1 a little bit hot, Oscar and himself, and he lost out because he was on the outside. But he heard what had been said by Oscar, and he said, well, we'll remember it next time. And so he's put it into the learning library and the mental library that he'll keep from now on. It's going to be quite a library by the time he finishes. He's only 18.
It certainly will be, won't it? Right, just over a minute left now in that final part of this first part of qualifying Q1, where we'll lose the slowest 5 drivers at risk at the moment. Esteban Ocon in 16th, ahead of Alonso. Gasly is 18th, Bearman 19th, Stroll down in 20th, but Lewis Hamilton needs to find time as well. He'll have one flying lap to do it. He's currently 15th and on the bubble. His teammate Charles Leclerc is about to cross the line now. Doesn't improve in that final sector. Has the track suddenly stopped evolving in this final few moments because Charles Leclerc stays put in 9th. Gasly pops himself up into 15th. That pushes Lewis Hamilton down into the elimination zone, and Hamilton is really leaving it late. He's slowing up right into turn 17, trying to find himself a gap. He's got 25 seconds to get himself to the line. Hadjar crosses the line. He does improve. The Frenchman gets himself up into 6th. Verstappen and Piastri are 1 and 2. They've stayed in the box. Don't feel the need to come out again. They'll sail through to Q2. But this is the lap now for Lewis Hamilton, who is still struggling to get to grips with his new environment, this new car, this Ferrari that he is trying to get every single millisecond out of through the sweepers of sector 1 to the left, where it then arcs round into a tight U-bend out full throttle out of turn 7 towards the slight left-hand kink of turn 9, up through the gears, 8th gear. He's up on time to get himself through into the top 15. It's Jack Doohan who is most at risk right now in the Alpine. The Australian rookie didn't get through in this second part yesterday in the sprint qualifying, but he just crossed the line now and puts himself up into 11th spot. Tsunoda is currently in the danger zone too. He's down in 14th, ahead of Fernando Alonso, who won't get another go at it. He will be 15th, but he might well be shuffled down. Hamilton is now in 17th spot as Lando Norris shoots up to 2nd. Hamilton at the moment looking good to get himself a position into Q2. This is the sound of the 7-time champion down that long back straight over 1.2 kilometres, where you're reaching speeds of almost 340 kilometres an hour. You slam on the brakes, don't snatch a brake, don't lock up. He keeps it neat and tidy. Full throttle, sweeping left, sweeping right, sees off a lap around this Miami International Autodrome, and it's enough for Lewis Hamilton to get himself through into Q2. He slides up to 8th spot. Tsunoda manages it as well. He slots in just behind in the Red Bull, up into 9th, and that will be qualifying 1 complete, as Lando Norris says he hit the wall at the exit of turn 16. He still managed to find time and get himself up into 2nd spot. But Lewis Hamilton, Damon, leaving it late in the day to get himself through on that one.
He put pressure on himself, and I have to say, when he came back down at the end of the back straight and hit the brakes for that place where he locked up the previous run, my heart was in my mouth a little bit for him, because he might have known that he needs, that was the problem that he'd had before, and he would be praying that he got it right that time, and he did. And of course, that is the mark of a champion.
We're just going to get a look actually at Lando Norris, who had a bit of a messy ride through the chicane, losing the rear end, and out through 16, a light kiss with the front right on the exit of that almost 90-degree left-hander.
You say light kiss, Harry. I mean, anytime you tap these cars, you're risking quite a lot of catastrophe, because it doesn't take much to break a rim. You don't have to break the suspension, but what you don't want to be doing is knocking a car about. You want to get through this first run in qualifying safely, especially when you've got a car that's as good as the McLaren. He shouldn't really be hitting the wall.
No, but he has survived it and moved himself through into Q2. So, to confirm then, we have lost the Sauber of Nico Hülkenberg. Let's hear from him.
Oh dear. Yeah, not the cleanest one.
Not the cleanest one for Nico Hülkenberg. He'll be disappointed because, and shout out to Gabriel Bortoleto, who gets himself through into Q2 for only the third time this year. So well done to Gabriel Bortoleto, who actually ended that session in 11th. Hülkenberg out in 16th. Fernando Alonso out in 17th. Then Pierre Gasly, who will be really disappointed, out-qualified by his teammate Jack Doohan. Gasly out in 18th, Lance Stroll in the second Aston Martin 19th, and Oliver Behrman down in 20th and last. He didn't have a good run in sprint qualifying either.
Yeah.
Of course, had a bit of a touch with the wall in FP1 as well. I wonder if his confidence has been a bit knocked by that.
Yeah, it's possible, isn't it? I mean, he's had a few sessions this year where he's made mistakes, and it seems to have rattled him a little bit. Of course, when you come in with such a fantastic debut that as he did have, you kind of setting yourself up for something that will be less than that. But he normally impresses. I'm quite surprised to see him down there. We'll have to try and get to the bottom of why he's not better off than where he is. Hülkenberg, I have to say, unlike Nico, to not put in a stunning performance in qualifying. So again, it may have been traffic, may have been being brought out at the wrong time.
Yeah, just coming back to Behrman, best qualifying so far this year of 10th back in Japan. So that Haas car, I think, proving a little inconsistent for both drivers. Esteban Ocon only just made it through in 15th, less than a tenth of a second splitting him and Nico Hülkenberg. But we will go again for Q2, and I think as well as an admirable shout out for Gabriel Bortoleto, Jack Doohan also making good gains and getting himself through into the second part of qualifying.
Yeah, I'm looking at. We've mentioned that before. The issue with the
Q1 incident involving Piastri and Norris will be investigated after the session. That's coming in from race control, failing to follow race directions instructions, the maximum delta time, and that usually refers to them trying to find space out onto the track.
Just bad with traffic. Sector 1, Ferrari.
Gasly complaining about traffic. That thing about the race director's instructions, Damon, it comes up a million times every race weekend and nothing ever happens.
Yeah, they never normally come for that, but we'll keep an eye on it anyway as it's flashed up on race control. While we wait then for Q2 to get underway, let's check back in Jenny Gow.
And I know the race is always on in F1, but Max Verstappen and Yuki Tsunoda in their Red Bulls very early out and down to the end of the pit lane to try and queue, just being joined by Charles Leclerc in his Ferrari with that new blue and white special livery for this weekend, which really confuses me. And their race suits confuse me even more because they are white and blue, which is definitely not the Ferrari vibe. But the three of them have gone down to the end of the pits. It just seemed very early for Verstappen.
Yeah, they're clearly keen to get out there and get that track position as well and give themselves time, because we have seen here before you can crash and suddenly find yourself out. It's what did Max Verstappen when he had to go from, I think it was 14th and starting in the Miami grid and work his way up, because Charles Leclerc, I think, had a crash in qualifying a couple of years ago. That prevented Max Verstappen from getting his final run in and gave him work to do. So important to try and get that banker lap in as well. You can never be too certain in this game.
Yeah, so the banker lap is a question of, you want to get some feel for what it's genuinely going to be like when I need to push. So you can't just drive round, tool round on a kind of gentle banker lap. It has to be a quality lap of some sort. And of course, driving these cars to the maximum and coming back from the maximum a tiny bit. These drivers are so skillful, they can do it, and they might be a tenth off what they would say would be the very edge. But I mean, if you get a banker, there's two ways to look at it. You can go out there and nail it, but of course, as you said, the risk is enormous if you get a problem like we saw with Lewis, on their first run, and the first run is wasted. Then the pressure is really on for the last run. You have to get that last run right. So it's a really preferential situation if you can do a quality first lap. That's the nature of this sport. It isn't easy. It's delivering all the time. But I doubt that anybody will do a lap on their first run. Certainly in Q2, that will be absolutely the maximum they can do.
But coming back as well to what you were saying about the close margins, that's always something you have to factor in. I think I just had a look from Verstappen after that first Q1 session down to Nico Hülkenberg, who was knocked out, just 0.6 of a second covering all those drivers, which is pretty incredible.
Yes, when they're on low fuel and they're in qualifying mode, these cars, there's very, very little margin between them. The competition is really intense, and it should bring it home to everyone that to be successful in Formula One, to gain the 10th of a second, let's say, or half a 10th of a second that could make you a world champion is extremely time consuming, and there's a lot of hard work, a lot of money, and it's the application of resources that you have in the right way so that you're working towards the goal and getting results. It's so hard, Formula One. And of course with the driver as well, they cannot afford, let's say they have an extra bacon sarnie or something before they go out. That's time. It is literally the weight of everything that they do accounts for time and has an effect on their performance. So the margins are ridiculously small.
I think a bacon sarnie is what me and producer Paddy had this morning for breakfast, so I don't think we'll be getting the call up for a Formula One car, Formula One driving session anytime soon. Q2 then underway. Max Verstappen leads them out on a fresh set of tyres, again on the soft. 13 minutes and 5 seconds remain as Verstappen heads through turn 1 and sweeps his way through the left-hander of 3, which bleeds into 4 as you're almost clinging on for dear life before you head round to turn 7, where it's an ever-tightening, really, left-hander that concertina's up and then spits you out as you're travelling at just over 230 kilometres an hour before you dab onto the brakes to slow the speed and scrub it off. Then you're back full throttle coming out of the first sector down towards turn 9. Quick slight left-hander through 10, another dose of the DRS. You flip the switch on your steering wheel, gives you around about 0.76 second of a gain before you then slam on the brakes. Heavy braking zone into turn 11, down through the gears, through the right-hand U-bend of turn 12. Seen a couple of incidents there when moves are trying to be made, particularly during racing scenarios. Then you're heading up and then down again over the chicane, 14 and 15, a quick left-right into the left-hander of turn number 16. A little bit of traffic for Max Verstappen to deal with in the form of the Williams, but it gets out of the way as he flies down, reaching speeds of almost 340 kilometres an hour before he slams on the brakes once more, down through the gears into the left-hander of turn 17, comes past our commentary box in the blink of an eye and crosses the line round the final corner for his opening gambit in Q2, a 1:26.643 for the reigning champion. But time still being set. Carlos Sainz going well in the middle sector, so too Charles Leclerc, who's just taken the fastest sector time in the middle sector time away from Verstappen. The Red Bull of Tsunoda's just popped up into second as well, but some way adrift of his teammate Verstappen, about half a second as Leclerc splits them as he crosses the line. Verstappen, Leclerc, Tsunoda, the top 3.
A good 0.3 of a second though between Charles Leclerc's time and Max Verstappen's. Max Verstappen times at 1:26.6 is 0.2 off of Kimi Antonelli's fastest lap for the sprint qualifying yesterday. I'm trying to remember when it was yesterday. So they're close to that maximum. So let's see what Kimi does when he's got his first run in this Q2.
Carlos Sainz has just bridged that gap between Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen, got it down to just over 2.5 tenths of a second. Again, we're going to be looking at the track evolution here and how that evolves from the beginning of this session to the end, constantly ebbing and flowing. So these opening lap times, expecting them to get quicker and quicker. We'll have the usual time in the middle of this session when we come back into the pits and see who needs to go again. But it's currently Verstappen, Sainz, Leclerc, the top three. Hamilton's got himself up into fourth, make that fifth as Albon comes across the line and puts himself in second. Tsunoda is sixth ahead of Bortoleto, Ocon eighth, Lawson ninth, and the last car with a time on the board at the moment. But Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri are both out there at the moment. Lando Norris fastest of anybody in the middle sector. His teammate Piastri will cross the line first and goes clear at the top by over 3.5 tenths of a second. But Lando Norris was absolutely flying in that middle sector. Can he hold it in the final sector? It's not quite enough still. Less than 2.5 tenths separating him and Piastri. Norris into second.
Yeah, interesting. So I don't know what happened there in the last part of the laps. Maybe these tyres started to give up their performance.
I think that first sector, Piastri did a 1:28.4 and Norris only a 1:28.7. So a few tenths off the pace there. And again, actually, it was really all lost in that first sector.
It was lost in the first, yeah. It wasn't lost in the last, yeah.
So otherwise, they're actually pretty tight there between the two of them in the second and the final sectors. So Norris, we'll get another go at it later on. At the moment, George Russell is down in 11th after his first lap time on the board, ahead of Esteban Ocon. Jack Doohan is 13th, Liam Lawson 14th, and Isaac Hadjar still in the pits actually, and has been out there on the circuit, but then came back in to complete his lap time. 15 drivers left in this one as we continue to set the grid for the Miami Grand Prix. We'll have 57 laps of that on Sunday, which you can hear in full on BBC Radio 5 Live. We'll be on air with an hour's build-up from 8 o'clock.
No grip, don't know what's going on.
Russell struggling out there, no grip, doesn't know what's going on. So, Jenny Gow, questions down at Mercedes.
Yeah, uncomfortable for George Russell. He was on a set of used tyres. It's worth noting that 5 drivers managed to save a set of softs. Might be a slight advantage going into this one. They are Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen and Kimi Antonelli. So those drivers all have an extra set of soft tyres going into this middle section of qualifying.
Very worth noting. Thank you, Jenny, as we now head back into the pits for a quick breather for Charles Leclerc, fanning himself in the cockpit of his car. Charles Leclerc currently in 7th spot. This is the sound of the Monegasque a little earlier on the track. On his first lap, did he have a touch with the wall? Got oh so close on the exit of turn 16. Oh, that's as close as you dare. 5 centimetres according to the graphics. He was away from the wall.
It's miles away from the wall. I mean, we've been seeing zeros, haven't we, quite a few times.
That is true.
I don't know how they're measuring it.
I think we had a 0 centimetre yesterday for Pierre Gasly.
But, of course, 0 can also mean you hit it really hard. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a glancing blow. So maybe to have a pressure sensor there. But, yeah, he's close, but no damage this time.
No damage. Well, who's looking good then? George Russell feeling like he needs a little bit more grip out there. Let's see how he goes in his final run. I'll tell you who I'm actually quietly impressed with at the moment. Gabriel Bortoleto seems to be having one of his better runs through into Q2, out-qualifying his teammate Nico Hülkenberg. He actually looks strong in sprint qualifying as well, but he made a mistake, and that cost him the time he needed to get into the second part of sprint qualifying. I know it's woulda, shoulda, coulda in Formula 1, but Bortoleto seems to be having a better time of it this weekend with that Sauber, which we know can't be the funnest car to drive on the grid.
Well, yeah, I mean, sometimes it's had its moments, hasn't it? I think this is...
Yeah, get me out there early. Just no confidence in the car, mate. No grip, sliding everywhere.
That's Russell then. He wants to get out there early doors, so he's got the time to try and improve his lap time. He is currently down in 11th, 8 tenths off, or nearly 9 tenths off of Oscar Piastri's fastest time.
Just trying to see whether his first run was on used tyres. I think it was it?
Yeah, I think it was.
So, I mean, it can be a huge difference between... Because what happens is that when the tyres have been gone through a heat cycle, when they cool off and then they're reheated, they sometimes have a different chemistry, and so they can be quite awkward to drive. So once you put a new set of tyres on George Russell, let's just see what he feels after that. It's the worst thing you can here, if you're a race engineer, your driver saying to you, I've got no grip, nothing works, and he has to go away and scratch his head. And probably the best solution he can come up with is saying, well, try a brand new set of tyres and we'll see what happens then.
Would you ever do that as a driver just to try and lower expectations sometimes? And then when you do qualify really well, the team are like, wow, how did you pull that out of the bag?
Yeah, it's no good if you're going to demoralise the driver. And like he said, he's got no confidence in the car. That's not a good thing. You don't want to hear that. So it can be a bad move. I mean, I'm surprised he didn't say, given that those were used tyres, then I understand where we're at. But he's got one run now, and this is where the pressure comes in, isn't it? He's actually 11th. George Russell, we're talking about, is 8/10 off the quickest, which is Piastri in Q2, and they've got 5 minutes left, and he wants to get out there early to get a clear run. Again, he doesn't want to be caught out in traffic. As we see him coming, we see them all rolling out of the garages now and coming down the pit lane. There's a bit of a queue of cars, and as Albon, who is not able to make it out of the Williams garage, he has to sit there and wait for all these cars to file past him and go up to the end of the pit lane.
Yeah, Williams didn't time that one too well. I think it might have been Sainz who has to wait for them all to come through. You say, I mean, George Russell almost 9/10 off Piastri. He's actually half a second pretty much adrift of his teammate Kimi Antonelli at the moment, who's up in third. So Russell won't be liking the look of those numbers.
No, but I mean, a new set of soft tyres can give you half a second, especially if there's track evolution as well. And also, you just need a clean lap. But, he's going at this hoping it's going to work rather than building on something that he's experienced before with a run that was more competitive.
Well, just over 4 minutes then left of this second part of qualifying Q2 and the fight to get yourself into the top 10, into that battle for pole. We are about to lose the slowest 5 drivers from this one. 11th down to 15th will be eliminated as they crawl out of the pit lane. I have to say, Jenny, looking out of the commentary box window, I think the clouds have slightly greyed over a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. To my right, blue skies with nice white puffy clouds. But to my left, definitely darker clouds. And you could just feel it in the air, can't you? That little bit of something. Humidity's rising and the wind has picked up a little bit. And it just feels like it might rain. Let's see. I mean, we didn't expect rain this morning and it did. Now we're looking at the clouds and it might rain, so it probably won't. But yeah, let's see what the weather brings.
Well, so far today, I don't think we could have predicted what's happened. So track temperature at the moment, 39 degrees, 65% humidity. The wind is fairly consistent, about 12 kilometres an hour being registered on our timing screens. Air temperature about 27, but it is feeling hotter than that. Final laps then, who's in trouble? George Russell is down at 11th. Esteban Ocon, who's looking rather twitchy, coming through the high-speed turn 3 in his Haas, trying to get himself up into the top 10. He's down in 12 at the moment, ahead of Jack Doohan, Liam Lawson and Isaac Hadjar, who hasn't set a lap time. Hadjar leaving himself with just one attempt. I think he might have made a mistake on his first fly. He aborted his lap earlier on, but the 2 pink Racing Bulls for this one are back out there on the track, on the soft tyre for everybody. And Esteban Ocon, I think he did have a bit of a moment coming through turn 3, down on time to get himself up into Q2. Gabriel Bortoleto is currently occupying that coveted 10th place spot. Bortoleto will be really hoping he might be able to pull something out of the bag here and get himself a first top 10 start in his Formula 1 career for the reigning Formula 2 champion. He's going to have some work to do. We're expecting George Russell to be quicker on a fresh set of rubber, and indeed the margins are small. Esteban Ocon 8 thousandths of a second up to get himself into Q3, but Hadjar also running well too in the Racing Bulls.
Well, assuming that none of them, assuming there is improvement to be found, I think Esteban Ocon, for example, will have to do currently a 3/10 of a second quicker lap than he's done to get in the top 10. And what has he done? 3/10 of a second. He's done it. So currently he's in the top 10, Esteban Ocon, even though he didn't have his quickest first sector. Maybe he misjudged the way the tyres came in, or he had a bit of traffic, but he's there at the moment on the bubble, because I think that will be beaten, that lap time, by some of the people behind him.
Yeah, Ocon up tonight, but what's Hadjar got? He squeezes inside the top 10. That puts Hamilton back down into the bottom 5. Lewis Hamilton left it to the final lap in Q1 to get himself up into Q2. Will he do it again and get himself into that top 10? His old teammate George Russell finds himself in a similarly precarious situation. He's down in 13th and struggling for grip. Going better this time around though. The middle sector not as clean as his sector 1. He's just made his way over the chicane, up and down over 14 and 15. Then the left-hander beckons of turn 16, but he's found time in that middle sector. He's almost 4/10 up on Isaac Hadjar's lap time, which should see him clearly into Q2, but he has to not make any mistakes coming into the heavy braking zone of turn number 17. Nice and smooth from the British racer, eases that Mercedes out onto the exit, sweeping left, sweeping right. This should be enough for George Russell to get himself into Q2, nicely into Q3, nicely does it for Russell, up into 3rd, but Hamilton's in trouble here. He's down in 12th at the moment, needs to find time, and it's not going too well for him at the moment in that first sector. Doohan can't improve. He stays 14th. Liam Lawson's currently down in 15th. Ocon is on the bubble in 10th. Hadjar's been demoted down to 11th right now. Lawson comes across the line. He can't improve either, and he takes the checkered flag. Lewis Hamilton out on track, and Damon, he is not lighting up the sector times. He's bailed out of it.
Oh, yeah, he's definitely backed off there. He's shaking his head as well.
I think he might have lost it in turn 2 with a bit of an oversteer moment, as he's actually shaking his head slightly in the cockpit of his Ferrari. Hamilton out of Q2 in 12th, couldn't complete that final lap, and will have some work to do come Sunday's Grand Prix. Let's get a look and see if he made a mistake here into the braking zone of the final corner.
It's the same problem, isn't it? It's under braking. It's the same as he had in Q1, locked up the left front.
Locks up, and there goes Lewis Hamilton's chances of getting through and up into Q2 as he makes his way back around again. The clock has counted down to 0, so that will be the second part of this qualifying done and dusted. We lose Isaac Hadjar in 11th, Lewis Hamilton 12th, Gabriel Bortoleto in 13th, Jack Doohan 14th, and Liam Lawson 15th. Those are your cars knocked out. Outside of Hamilton, I think, not too surprised.
No, but if you look at Charles's time, it was, he's only a 10th quicker, not even a 10th quicker than Lewis Hamilton, but he's, 5 places further up the grid.
Less than half a tenth between Hamilton and getting himself through into Q3?
Yeah, again, it's these really tight margins between all of the cars, but it's making this into, I think it was mentioned that this is a qualifying, the emphasis is on qualifying for this championship, because that will determine how your race goes. Where you qualify clearly is massively important, but the margins are so tiny that if you can just find yourself 0.2 of a second, you can jump up 5-6 places on the grid.
I think the concern for Ferrari, apart from Hamilton's actual position, will be just the general pace of the cars. Leclerc wasn't here, some radio.
Come on, man! Oh my god.
The always calm Isaac Hadjar expressing his frustration at being 11th and just missing out on the top 10. But the point I was trying to make was that Ferrari, Leclerc qualified 4th the last race in Saudi Arabia, I believe, finished on the podium. And this weekend they're just nowhere. 0.679 seconds Leclerc is off the fastest time from Oscar Piastri in that second session of qualifying. Both Williams cars ahead of both Ferrari cars. Ferrari only a couple of hundredths ahead of Yuki Tsunoda's Red Bull and Esteban Ocon's Haas. Something's not working for Ferrari as a team this weekend, let alone Hamilton. Here's more radio.
What is going on with this battery?
We do have a problem, clearly, and that's what we tried to manage the whole session, unfortunately, and it seems that we didn't really get the...
That was Liam Lawson in the other Racing Bull. Disappointed then for him down in 15th, but potentially managing a battery issue on board the Kiwi Racers car. Right, as Lewis Hamilton walks forlornly down the pit lane, let's head to Jenny Gow.
Yeah, he doesn't cut a very happy figure, does he, with his yellow helmet and those blue and white overalls for this weekend. And he hasn't even taken his helmet off yet. I know he needs to go and get weighed at the FAA garage, but most of the drivers usually take their balaclavas off, take their headphones out, and kind of get themselves sorted for speaking to the media, but I don't think Lewis Hamilton's going to be a very happy man. And such a contrast, isn't it, from being on the podium earlier today in that sprint quali, and those sprint races are obviously working for him. He won in China at the beginning of the season, but now look at him. It's he cuts a very sorry figure, I'm afraid.
The thing is, Jenny, he wasn't quick in the sprint race. He was struggling on the intermediate tyres, and he that's why one of the reasons why he stopped early for the slicks, because he just felt he had nothing to lose. It really worked out for him, but it wasn't indicative of being suddenly competitive. China, I'm not quite sure what happened there, but it just feels like he hit on a setup early on that weekend and then sort of slipped progressively backwards through the rest of the weekend. But they're really struggling at the moment, Ferrari.
Another way of looking at it is if he'd out-qualified his teammate Charles Leclerc, he still might be behind two Williamses. So for a team like Ferrari, they're not having a happy weekend here.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like at the moment it's just a Lewis Hamilton issue, even though they are very much there. Leclerc will not be happy either with his position, but he does go through into Q3. The final part of qualifying, the top 10 shootout and the battle for pole position. And right now, at the end of that session, it's advantage Oscar Piastri, who ended it almost 2.5 tenths clear of his teammate Lando Norris. Here is Charles Leclerc.
These are the best laps I can do. I cannot go faster than that, literally.
And that, if you're the engineer on the pit wall, is the last thing you want to hear from your driver. If the best you could do is P8 right now.
And this is Charles Leclerc saying that's the best I can do.
Who is blinder over one lap.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that if he's saying he can't go any faster, that's the limit of the car.
Well, a lot of head scratching then down at Ferrari. They are hoping to bring some upgrades from, I think, around Imola onwards, so the next round, and implement them over the course of as we get into the European leg of the season. So the sooner they come for the Scuderia, the better. But now we have a little moment to breathe and pause as we head into that top 10. We will have 2 McLarens, we will have 2 Mercedes of Russell and Antonelli, we'll have 2 Red Bulls of Max Verstappen and Yuki Tsunoda, the 2 Williams of Sainz and Albon, the 1 remaining Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, and the 1 remaining Haas, Esteban Ocon, snuck in there into the top 10. Decent running for the Frenchman.
Yeah, and they were actually showing a little close-up there of Oscar Piastri sitting in his car, and you were saying we've got a moment to pause, but of course this is where they earn their money. This is where you decide whether or not you are going to win a world championship. These moments of concentration coming into the final Q3, the final part of qualifying, and it is intense concentration and everything to play for, because with the case of Oscar Piastri, he's got a chance to again put one over on his teammate. So we've got a battle between these two. Can Lando Norris pull off one of his special laps and reverse this trend that we started to see during this last three or four races?
Well, we're just a few moments away from finding out. You're listening to qualifying ahead of the Miami Grand Prix. Alongside me, Harry Benjamin is the 1996 Formula One World Champion Damon Hill. Also joining us in the box is the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. And down on the ground, our roving reporter is Jenny Gow.
Yes, with 12 minutes on the clock, I'm just looking at the track temperature. It's gone down a little to 39 degrees. Air temperature is 27 degrees. But what is noticing me, humidity is up to 65%. And the wind speed is picked up as well to around 2.5 meters per second. That's very different than this morning. And those grey clouds are just drifting towards us even closer.
Just having a spy out of the commentary box. I mean, it has greyed over for certain, but everyone will be keeping their fingers crossed that we can get this done in time.
At the risk of sounding like the shipping forecast, we are concentrating on the weather because it does have an enormous effect. So Jenny's quite right. The track temperature has dropped. That will affect the warm-up procedure these guys will adopt to get their tyres into that operating window, which is a very small temperature window. And it will be different if they leave the pits and the track is cooling to if the sun was shining and the track was baking hot. They may be trying to conserve heat this way. They might be trying to have to put more heat in a little bit earlier so the tyres are in the optimum condition for the start of the lap.
Well, they are already out on the track. Weaving left, weaving right, getting temperature into those tyres. 11 minutes and 15, 14, 13 seconds remain of this final part of qualifying. Lando Norris taking his time, heading out of the pit lane exit, trying to build that gap in the pit lane to have some clean air out on track, to give himself the best chance at putting in the ideal lap time. Lando Norris looking for his second pole position of the season. His teammate Oscar Piastri looking for his third, along with the Red Bull of Max Verstappen. But could Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes throw a spanner into the works yet again after securing pole for the sprint race? Could he follow it up and become the youngest ever pole sitter ahead of a Grand Prix? The Italian rookie hoping to do that. Can George Russell find a bit more form out there? He's been looking a little bit on the back foot so far. And can anybody else come to play? Can Carlos Sainz, can Alex Albon get themselves into the mix? Charles Leclerc feels like he is struggling to find any more inside that Ferrari. And the remaining players include Yuki Tsunoda and Esteban Ocon. 10 cars heading out onto the circuit for the final shootout ahead of Grand Prix Sunday.
And it's all down to the drivers now, I think, Harry. It is literally down to how they prepare themselves, what state of mind they're in, how they prepare their tyres. Obviously, the team have done their bit. There's almost nothing more they can do. We heard Charles Leclerc saying, well, that's it, guys. What can they do? They've got nothing else they can do other than give them a new set of tyres and say, have another go.
I'd also point out that although Max Verstappen was only 5th in that second session, he was on used tyres when he set that time, so I don't think he's out of this at all. And here he goes out on his first qualifying lap, Harry.
Coming through turn 3, speeding through the right-hander, which then sweeps you round through 4 and into 5. Then it becomes an ever-tightening left-hander through turn 7, almost horseshoe-like, as he then gets on the power, full throttle, diving towards turn 9. The DRS line will come as he ends the first sector, heading down towards the short straight from turn 10 through to turn 11. A heavy braking zone as he brakes just after the 100-meter braking board, as it Concertina's up to the left, you bends to the right through turn 12 before it then chucks you once again left into 13. Then you're heading up through an elevation change. Quick left, quick right as you head back down over the chicane. Almost a 90-degree left-hander that brings you out onto that long back straight, over 1.2 kilometers long. Keeping it neat and tidy. Get as close to the wall as you dare, but do not touch it. Bide your time. Get to the DRS line. Hit the switch. The letterbox on the rear wing opens, and then before you know it, it slams shut after the 100-meter braking board. Down through the gears into the left-hander of 17. 2 more corners to go. Taken flat out. A sweeper to the left. A sweeper to the right. Sees off a lap for Max Verstappen, and his opening flyer in this final part of qualifying sees him go fastest with a 1:26.492.
Yeah, and as it stands, that is quicker than Oscar Piastri can do. We'll see what he can do in the final sector, but Lando Norris has done a fastest middle sector, and Piastri goes to the line with the quickest final sector, followed closely by Lando Norris. What will this deliver?
17 thousandths of a second between Piastri and Verstappen. Norris manages to get in between that, but he can't pit Verstappen in these opening stages. 3 thousandths of a second splitting Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. Then another 17,000 seconds back to Oscar Piastri. Fine margins in this modern day of Formula One racing. Kimi Antonelli is going to be the next driver across the line. The man who set pole for the sprint race right now, though, not lighting up the timing screens enough to challenge in these early stages, does put himself up into 4th spot. Can his teammate George Russell pip him as he crosses the line? He cannot. In fact, he's a couple of tenths off and down in 6th place. Antonelli has got the legs on Russell so far this weekend, it has to be said.
Well, that is an extra impressive. We were talking about whether or not you put in a banker. I think that we're just watching a replay actually of George Russell locking up, so this is why George was down on his teammate and also down on the other competitors. He's actually made a mistake on his first run, and also seeing Lando Norris replay of Lando locking up as well. They're showing quite a lot of them now. They've got Charles Leclerc who's also gone straight on. So we're now getting the full story of why the drivers are where they are in this first run. But Max Verstappen, he put in not only a banker, but it was a beautiful lap. I don't know if you were talking about getting close to the wall on the exit of turn 15, is it 14? And he wasn't that close. He looked very neat. He didn't look like it was ragged. He's put in an absolutely beautiful lap. Quick lap, enough for pole position provisionally, but also a lovely banker. He's got the luxury of going for the next run and really sticking everything on the line.
That Norris replay, that can't surely have been on his flying lap because he's only 3 thousandths behind Verstappen.
I wonder if it was on his out lap.
Yeah, and there's 17 thousandths covering the top 3. It's absolutely so unbelievably close between these 3 cars. And just as a reminder, Red Bull have a new floor on Verstappen's car this weekend. It's their first sort of upgrade that they brought this year to try to sort of close this gap to McLaren. And so far it looks like it's working really quite well.
It certainly is. And a word on Charles Leclerc, who was out there, but he had a big lock-up into turn 17 and bailed out of it. He was actually looking quite good in that final sector.
No, the telltale, Harry, is 1 point.
Goes from
there's a purple sector, mini sector on the screen. We have this sort of line of blocks, and green is for the fastest that driver's done, purple is for the fastest anyone's done, and then yellow is if you go slower. And Leclerc is green all the way through the lap, and then there's a block of purple, which is exactly where he's missed his braking point for the final corner.
And gone straight on, and then he decided to bail out of that one and come into the pit. So Leclerc bailing on his final lap then. We take that breather after the first flyers. Let's check in with Jenny.
Yes, I just looking at which cars were using used tyres in that run. So Alex Albon in 5th place was on a set of used. So was Carlos Sainz, so the 2 Williams. Then Esteban Ocon, who was in 8th place, was on used, and Yuki Tsunoda was the other driver who set their tyres on. So he set their times on used tyres. So maybe they can improve when they've got new tyres on for this second run.
Well, Tsunoda and Red Bull will certainly be hoping they can improve because he's over a second off his teammate Max Verstappen at the moment, where he hasn't been that far off when it's a straight shootout. He has been looking fairly decent as you can in that second seat, 3/10, 4/10 roughly.
I'd say this is a good weekend for Yuki at the moment. So far, so good. But if those are used tyres, he's got a bit more to come. So and also they're very impressive. If that was Williams' Albon on used tyres too. But they showed while we were chatting, they were showing a slow motion replay of Oscar Piastri going over 14, 15 and launching the car over the curbs in kind of rally style. We actually got clean air at all 4 wheels off the ground, and that was it was impressive, if a little bit hairy.
Would it have cost him 17 thousandths of a second?
Well, it might have gained him 17,000. That's the point. It's, the only reason he's doing it is because he wants to go faster. So maybe he's trying that technique. It's a bit of a gamble, but it was quite nice to watch.
You can't call this. It's unbelievable.
You mean you don't have the top line for your report yet?
No, it's just sitting here quite happily, not writing anything. So.
I can't believe it. I mean, it literally is. The top 3 at the moment are separated by less than a tenth of a second. How does that happen?
I mean, you look at this, 10 thousandths of a second even between Albon and Russell in 5th and 6th, and that's only after the first flyers with 3 minutes exactly left of Q3 right now.
It's coming down to a gust of wind, isn't it, at the right moment or the wrong moment?
Or a bacon sandwich.
Or a bacon sandwich.
What did they have for lunch in
I've got a strong
between?
feeling that these drivers don't eat bacon sandwich on a race weekend.
Maybe after, as a treat, but certainly not on a race weekend. Well, let's see. At the moment, it's Verstappen on provisional pole. Lando Norris is second ahead of Oscar Piastri. Kimi Antonelli is 4th. Alex Albon in the top 5 ahead of George Russell. But it's Sainz, Ocon, Tsunoda and Leclerc without a lap on the board yet. So he's left himself 1 flyer to get this done.
We're looking, I should say, how carefully Max is going out preparing his tyres for this outlap. It is really important. They understand now that these tyres need nursing and bringing in to full temperature in the right way to get them in the window for the start of the lap.
Well, we started this qualifying session with the heat turned up and blue skies peeking out from white puffy clouds. That came after an absolute deluge of rain that affected the sprint race early doors. And in these closing stages, well, now it's slightly greyed over. Overcast skies appear once more over this 5.4 kilometre, 3.3 mile track with 1 minute and 40 left on the clock as the 10 drivers remaining in this qualifying session put in their final offerings, their best offerings. Max Verstappen into turn 1, having to have a couple of goes at the steering wheel though. Would that have cost him a little bit of time as he tries to hold on to his provisional pole position?
He tried to turn in for turn 1 and it didn't want to know, and we're watching him squirming through the first sector. But there you are, the fastest first sector, even despite all of that. A bit of understeer, a bit of an oversteer as well. and let's see how he gets on in the middle sector.
22 thousandths of a second up on his own time through sector 1 as Lando Norris has a cleaner ride through the right-hander of turn 1 as it then sweeps you through fast flowing left right of turn 2 and 3. Really medium speed, high speed corners making up this sector 1 around the Miami International Autodrome, which runs around the grounds of the Hard Rock Stadium, home to the Miami Dolphins NFL team. The 4th time we are back in Miami, and Max Verstappen in the middle sector, solid enough. Lando Norris slightly down on Verstappen's sector 1 time. Everybody out there on a lap at the moment. George Russell will be the last one to start his flyer. Sonoda out there as well, trying to improve. He's down in 5th. But Norris then needing to make up a little bit more time in the middle sector if he's going to challenge for pole, as Max Verstappen finishes off his lap and cements that provisional pole a little bit more. A bit of daylight between himself and Norris, almost 0.3 of a second. That's how Verstappen ends his run. But Lando Norris bites back. Fastest of anybody in the middle sector, making his way down the long back straight as well. Oscar Piastri out there on track 2, a little bit slower than his teammate in sector 1, a little bit slower again through sector 2, but there is nothing in it. Piastri will need it all in the final sector. Norris to the line, but he can't best Verstappen. He'll have to settle for second. Can Piastri do anything to haul himself up onto the front row of the grid, round the final corner for the Australian, fastest in the final sector, but stays in 3rd. Kimi Antonelli is out there as well. Alex Albon is having the lap of his life right now, coming through the final sector. His teammate Sainz has just popped up into 4th place. Antonelli, the man who put it on pole in the sprint yesterday, rounding the final corner now. The Italian rookie, can he do any damage in these closing stages? It was pole for the sprint yesterday, and it's 3rd for Grand Prix qualifying. A decent effort, a more than decent effort from the Italian rookie. Russell can't match his teammate though, up into 5th. Antonelli splits the two McLarens. Piastri down to 4th. Good efforts from Sainz and Albon in 6th and 7th. Charles Leclerc couldn't manage any more than 8th, with Ocon in 9th, ahead of the second Red Bull of Yuki Tsunoda. So it's Red Bull bookending the top 10, and it's Max Verstappen who takes pole position once again for the 2nd time around these streets. And for, well, the 3rd time this year, the reigning champ does it over 1 lap. Did it all fall away for Lando Norris though in the final corner, taking a huge amount of curb on the inside. Just take a look at this, Damon.
We're watching the onboard with Lando Norris and his sparkly helmet, the mirror ball crash helmet, being shaken around as he took a great big chunk of curb on the last sector. Maybe that was actually a little bit of a trick to actually get some more time. We were talking about Oscar Piastri taking the curbs, but Lando took a huge chunk there on the last one corner. But you can't keep this man back. Max Verstappen on pole position. He got it all right, and actually he's so focused. He's able to pull it out when it's needed as he gets out of the car and shakes the hand of the FIA president, Ben Sulayem.
Well, let's head down to Jenny Gao.
Yeah, so Max Verstappen just gets weighed, as do all the drivers after they do qualifying, and you can see that he is very happy with that. What a day they've had, but you can always guarantee that when it comes to it, Max Verstappen pulls something out of the bag. What is interesting, I would say, is this race has never been won from pole, so actually, does he want to be on pole? Of course he does.
Yeah, you're right. Charles Leclerc in 2022 for Ferrari put it on pole, but it was Verstappen who won it. Sergio Perez in 2023 put it on pole, but it was Max Verstappen who won the race. 2024, Max Verstappen put it on pole, but it was Lando Norris who won the race.
There's nothing you can do about the future right now. At the moment, he's on pole position. He's the fastest guy around this circuit, and he's narrowly gone quicker than did Kimi Antonelli in the previous qualifying that we had. So, the track did evolve, but not really by a lot. Kimi Antonelli's pole was 26.4, and Max's one, it was 26.2. So, it's very, very tight and difficult to gain an advantage. You can see that We're watching the two drivers chatting, Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, who will start on the front row. And as Jenny was saying, statistically, that's not a good thing here. And it may well be wet tomorrow. So, but for the moment, that's a good performance.
Once again, the Dutchman pulls it out of the bag. 65 thousandths of a second was what separated him and Lando Norris in the end. And then only 2 thousandths of a second separating Antonelli from another front row start. I mean, hugely impressive weekend so far for Antonelli. Over one lap at least.
No, absolutely. He's really put down a little bit of a marker there for everyone to take note of. You know, he's obviously clearly enjoyed this circuit. He's come here and been quick right from the word go, and he's done some stunning laps. And you know, I'm sure the car isn't quite up to pole, it isn't quite up to beating the others, so he's probably got the best out of it, but it's very close, and he certainly made the best use of it in the qualifying for the sprint race.
Well, let's hear from our top three. They're speaking, and they will be shortly, to Martin Brundle.
Many congratulations, Max. First of all, on the birth of Lily this week. What a wonderful week you've had already. First time I've had a chance to see you. Spectacular. And then today, pole position. Where do you find this time? It's extraordinary. You magic time up out of somewhere.
Yeah, it's been a great qualifying. I think we improved the car a tiny amount as well, which helped me to basically rotate it a bit better. And honestly, you know, Q1, Q2, Q3, just improving every run, really trying to find a bit more the limit. I had a tiny moment on my final lap into turn 1, so I lost a bit of time there, but around here it's just very complicated with the tires over a lap. But at the end, it worked out well, so I'm very happy, of course, to be on pole.
Yeah, because the back end stepped out on you in turn 1, but you obviously had the confidence just to keep pinning it.
I mean, you can back out of it, but it's qualifying, so try and correct it, and just floor it out of the corner.
So you're in the right place. It could well be wet tomorrow. The track was pretty difficult earlier on today in the sprint.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, race pace, I don't know. We have to wait and see for the weather, but it's the best starting position. That's always positive. And then in the race, of course, is a whole different story, but of course we'll try to maximize everything we can.
Well done.
Thank you.
Lando, P2, top McLaren, but Max found the ounce of extra speed somewhere.
No, to Max, especially being a dad now. I was hoping it was going to slow him down a little bit, but it clearly didn't. So, no, I'm happy with today. Happy with the progress I've been making with the car, with myself. So, no, Max did a max lap once again, and I can't fault him. So, happy and excited for tomorrow.
You were right there, but you had a little lock up into T17.
I did, yeah. I think even that lap, it's all shoulda, woulda, coulda stuff, you know, but I didn't deliver. I mean, the pace was there. The car's been still feeling good. I've been feeling better than I have done over the last few weekends. I've still obviously not put it together, but it is what it is. Max on par on P2, so ready to see what we can do into turn 1.
Yeah, especially if it rain tomorrow. You were mighty on the intermediates earlier on in the sprint.
I was, so let's pray for that. I don't really mind if it's going to be dry or wet, but Miami seems to be surprising quite a bit with the weather at the minute, so I'm ready for both.
Well done. Go
Cheers,
well.
man. Thank you.
Kimi, another outstanding performance in your rookie season, top 3. You were on pole for the sprint. I mean, you must be so satisfied, so pleased with what you're achieving this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, this weekend is going well so far. Was a bit disappointing this morning, but was good to bounce back this way. And I struggled a little bit during the quali. I didn't have such a clean run like I had yesterday. But that last lap was quite good. I was a bit too greedy in turn 1. Starting the lap, but the rest of the lap was quite good, so I'm happy with it.
I think it was more than quite good. You split the mighty McLarens to put yourself right in contention.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the gaps are super tight, and definitely, you know, if you can gain just few hundreds, you can make up so many places. So it's really about putting everything together, and so far this weekend, and I'm doing that, and hopefully tomorrow we can have a good race.
And we look forward to that.
Thank you so much.
Your top three ahead of the Miami Grand Prix with Max Verstappen, who will start on pole position. Alongside him, the McLaren of Lando Norris, and Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes will go from third. You can join us for all 57 laps of round 6 of the Formula One World Championship on BBC Radio 5 Live. We're going to have an hour's build-up from 8 o'clock ahead of Lights Out from 9 o'clock in the evening UK time. I hope you can join us for it. My thanks to Jenny Gow, to Andrew Benson, to Damon Hill. We'll see you for Sunday's Grand Prix. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.